Before we begin, if you love watching the secret lives of birds and want to understand what they are really trying to tell you every day, make sure you subscribe to Bird Intelligence. And while you're listening, I want you to keep a mental scorecard. How many of these mistakes are you making right now? Because by the end of this video, most people discover they're doing at least 3 of them without realizing it. And the last one may be the most surprising of all. There is a chickadee sitting somewhere in a tree near your yard right now, and every time you step outside, it may be saying something about you, not in a vague or symbolic way. Researchers have spent decades studying chickadee communication at institutions including the University of Washington, Cornell University, and the University of Montana. What they discovered is fascinating. The calls birds make when humans appear are not random. They often function as highly specific threat assessments. In other words, the birds around your home may already have an opinion about you. They may be communicating whether you're safe, whether you're unpredictable, and whether other birds should keep their distance. Now here's the uncomfortable question. If the birds in your yard could speak directly to you for just 60 seconds, what would they ask you to stop doing immediately? The answer is probably not what you think, because there are at least 7 common habits that bird lovers unknowingly repeat every day. Habits that trigger alarm calls, habits that reduce trust, habits that make birds avoid places they would otherwise enjoy visiting, and almost nobody realizes they're doing them. Tonight, we're going through all 7. Some of them are simple, some are surprising, and one of them might completely change how you use your backyard from now on. So before we continue, tell me something in the comments. What bird do you see most often where you live? A chickadee, a robin, a dove, a cardinal? I'm curious to see which bird appears most often in the bird intelligence community. Now let's begin with the mistake that almost nobody talks about: the clothes you're wearing. It sounds ridiculous at first, but multiple studies have shown that the colors you wear can influence how birds react to your presence. In 2014, researcher Piotr Trojanowski and his team published findings showing that birds often allowed people wearing green and dark blue clothing to approach much closer before flying away. People wearing bright red, orange, or yellow clothing triggered escape behavior at significantly greater distances. The reason isn't fashion, it's survival. Birds evolved in a world where bright, highly visible colors frequently signal danger. Their vision is even more sensitive than ours. Many species can see ultraviolet wavelengths that humans cannot. Colors appear stronger, brighter, and more intense through a bird's eyes. So when you walk toward a feeder wearing a bright red sweatshirt, the birds may not simply see a person. They may see something much closer to a warning signal, a moving object that stands out dramatically against the natural environment. And here's the interesting part. Many bird lovers spend months building trust. They put out food. They create habitat. They spend time quietly observing. Then every morning, they walk outside wearing the exact colors that make birds nervous. Have you ever noticed that birds seem comfortable one day but unusually cautious the next? It might not be your imagination. It might be something as simple as what you're wearing. The good news is that this is one of the easiest fixes on today's list. Soft greens, soft blues, natural browns, colors that blend into the environment rather than dominate it. Small change, big difference. But compared to the next mistake, clothing is almost insignificant, because the second thing birds wish humans would stop doing is responsible for billions of deaths every year, and chances are some viewers won't like hearing it. Now let's talk about the one issue that creates more controversy than any other on this list: cats. Before you skip ahead, hear me out. This isn't about blaming cat owners. It's about understanding what birds experience every single day. In 2013, researchers Scott Loss, Tom Wilk, and Peter Mara published a landmark study estimating that free-ranging domestic cats kill billions of birds each year across the United States. Even the most conservative estimates are staggering, and what surprises many people is that hunger isn't the primary reason. Well-fed cats hunt too. They hunt because hunting is deeply wired into their instincts. The birds in your yard know this. They recognize cats as predators long before you ever notice one nearby. Some species have entirely different alarm calls for aerial predators and ground predators. And when a cat begins regularly visiting an area, birds often change their behavior dramatically. They spend less time feeding. They spend more time scanning for danger. Some abandon nesting areas altogether. Think about that for a moment. Imagine trying to enjoy dinner while knowing a predator might appear at any second. That's the reality many birds experience around outdoor cats. And here's a question I'd genuinely like you to answer in the comments. Did you know the impact of outdoor cats on bird populations before watching this video? Or is this your first time hearing these numbers? The solution isn't complicated. Keeping cats indoors protects birds. But it also protects cats. Indoor cats generally live much longer lives and avoid many of the dangers that outdoor animals face. Catio enclosures can also provide outdoor experiences without exposing birds to unnecessary risk. Many people assume a bell collar solves the problem. Research suggests it helps somewhat, but it does not eliminate hunting behavior. And unfortunately, birds quickly learn that a sound isn't always enough warning. Now here's something even more surprising. The next threat kills hundreds of millions of birds every year, and most people never witness a single death because it happens silently, and usually when nobody is watching. Glass. Researchers estimate that hundreds of millions of birds die from window collisions every year. What makes this problem so deceptive is that birds don't actually see the danger. When a bird looks at a window, it often sees reflected sky, reflected trees, reflected open space. In other words, it sees exactly where it wants to fly. The glass itself is nearly invisible. Many birds die instantly. Others fly away stunned and succumb hours later, which explains why homeowners rarely discover what happened. The evidence disappears. Have you ever heard a sudden thump against a window and wondered what caused it? If so, you may already know exactly what we're talking about. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Statistically, there are probably windows around your home that pose a risk right now. Not because you're careless, not because you're doing something wrong intentionally, simply because birds evolved long before glass existed. Their brains were never designed to recognize it. Fortunately, this problem is remarkably fixable. External decals, external screens, specialized bird-safe films, string-based bird savers, anything that breaks up reflections on the outside surface of the glass. The key word is outside. Many people place decorations inside the window and assume they've solved the problem. Unfortunately, the dangerous reflection remains on the exterior, and the birds still see open sky. The difference between a safe window and a dangerous one can literally be a few dollars and 20 minutes of work. Now I want you to think about your house. Which window worries you the most after hearing this? The large sliding door, the bay window, the picture window facing the yard? Let me know below. I'm curious how many bird intelligence viewers immediately thought of the exact same window. Now, let's move to something many bird lovers accidentally do every spring. And it begins with perfectly good intentions. You decide it's time to tidy up the yard. The shrubs are getting overgrown. The hedges need trimming. Maybe a tree branch is hanging lower than usual, so you grab the trimmer. You start cleaning everything up, and hidden inside that greenery is something you never saw: a nest. Bird nests are designed to be invisible. That's their entire purpose. A successful nest is one predators don't notice. Unfortunately, humans are often just as likely to miss them. Carolina wrens may nest in hanging decorations. Robins build nests on ledges. Mourning doves choose locations that seem impossibly exposed. Catbirds disappear deep into dense shrubs where few people ever look. To us, it appears to be an ordinary bush. To them, it's home. And when breeding season is underway, even brief disturbances can create serious consequences. Some parent birds abandon nests after repeated interruptions. Eggs cool. Nestlings go unfed. Entire breeding attempts can fail. The heartbreaking part is that most people never realize it happened. The nest was hidden before, and it's hidden afterward. So nothing appears different, except the birds know. If you've ever walked outside and suddenly noticed a bird frantically calling at you from nearby bushes, there's a good chance it wasn't angry. It was terrified. It may have been trying to warn you away from a nest you didn't even know existed. And here's something I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a bird nest somewhere completely unexpected? Inside a hanging basket, a porch decoration, a tool shed, a barbecue cover. Birds choose some truly incredible locations. Share your strangest nest discovery in the comments, because what we're about to discuss next might be even more common. Most people feed birds because they want to help them. But many bird lovers unknowingly offer foods that birds would rather never see again. Most people assume that if birds are eating something, it must be good for them. But birds aren't nutritionists. They simply eat what is available. And sometimes the foods humans provide cause more harm than help. Bread is one of the biggest examples. It's one of the most common foods offered to birds, and one of the least beneficial. Bread fills a bird's stomach without supplying many of the nutrients it actually needs. Imagine eating only junk food while feeling completely full. That's essentially what happens. Other foods create even bigger problems. Salted nuts, chocolate, avocado, onions, garlic. Many bird lovers are shocked to learn that some common kitchen foods can be dangerous or toxic to birds. Then there are the bargain seed mixes. You know the ones, huge bags that seem like an incredible deal. The problem is, that many are packed with fillers that most songbirds don't actually want. Birds dig through the mix searching for sunflower seeds and leave much of the rest scattered on the ground. The result? More waste, more unwanted visitors, and often fewer native birds. But the food itself isn't always the biggest issue. The feeder can be, because every feeder is also a gathering place, a community center, a crowded restaurant, and whenever animals gather in large numbers, disease spreads more easily. Researchers have documented outbreaks of salmonella and other illnesses linked directly to contaminated feeders. One sick bird can affect many others surprisingly quickly, which leads to a simple question. When was the last time you cleaned your feeder? Last week? Last month? Honestly, some people watching right now probably can't remember. And don't worry, you're not alone. Many bird lovers never realize feeder maintenance is just as important as providing food. A simple cleaning every couple of weeks can dramatically reduce disease transmission. A little effort can protect dozens of birds throughout a season. Now let's move to something birds experience every day that humans often completely overlook: noise. Birds live in a world built around sound, much more than we do. To a bird, sound isn't just background information. It's survival, it's communication, it's navigation, it's family. Every warning call, every mate attraction song, every contact call between parents and young, everything depends on being heard. Which is why certain human noises create far bigger problems than most people realize. Leaf blowers, lawnmowers, power washers, constant barking dogs, outdoor machinery, air conditioning units, and perhaps most surprising of all, wind chimes. I know, many people love wind chimes. They're relaxing, peaceful, beautiful for humans, but birds hear something different. Research suggests that persistent background noise can reduce nesting success, increase stress, and alter bird behavior. Imagine trying to have an important conversation while someone continuously blasts music nearby. That's often what birds experience. And wind chimes create a unique challenge. Their tones can overlap with frequencies birds use for communication. The result isn't always obvious. Birds simply become quieter, less social, less active. Sometimes they avoid the area altogether. Have you ever noticed a spot in your yard that birds rarely seem to use? Maybe there's a reason, and maybe it isn't the one you expected. Now I want to ask something. If you could eliminate one source of unnecessary noise around your home tomorrow, what would it be? Leaf blowers, traffic, a barking dog, wind chimes? Tell me below. I'd love to know what bird intelligence viewers think affects birds the most. Because the final habit on today's list is perhaps the strangest. It's something almost every person does, and most birds notice immediately. The way you walk, the way you move, and even the way you look at them. Birds are constantly reading body language. Every second, long before humans evolved, suburbs and bird feeders. Birds survive by interpreting predator behavior. A hawk doesn't announce its intentions. A fox doesn't send a warning. Predators communicate through movement, through posture, through attention, and birds became experts at reading those signals. That's why a direct approach often causes birds to fly away. Walking straight toward a bird feels threatening. Stopping and starting repeatedly feels threatening. Locking your eyes onto a bird feels threatening. Even sudden movements near your face can trigger alarm, because they resemble attack behaviors birds have evolved to fear. Think about how often people do exactly these things. A bird lands nearby. We freeze. We stare. We slowly step closer. Then we're surprised when it flies away. From the bird's perspective, everything about that interaction suggested danger. The fascinating part is that birds can learn. Over time, they begin recognizing individual humans. They learn which people behave predictably, which people move calmly, which people are safe, and which people are not. That's why some backyard birds eventually tolerate a person standing only a few feet away. Trust wasn't given, it was earned, one quiet interaction at a time. And that's really the bigger lesson behind everything we've discussed tonight. The birds in your yard are paying attention, far more attention than most people realize. They notice your habits, they notice your timing, they notice your movements, they notice your choices. Every day, they're gathering information. Every day, they're deciding whether your yard feels safe, and every day, they're communicating those decisions to one another in the only language they have, not through words, but through calls, distance, behavior, and trust. So before we finish, I want to ask you one final question. Which of these 7 habits surprised you the most? Was it clothing color, cats, windows, nesting season, feeder hygiene, noise, or the way we walk around birds? Tell me in the comments. I read as many comments as I can, and I genuinely love hearing the experiences and observations you share. And if you learned something new today, Make sure you subscribe to Bird Intelligence and join us for the next video. Because the more we understand birds, the more we realize they've been communicating with us all along. Most people never notice, but now you will, and once you start seeing those signals, you'll never look at your backyard the same way again. Thank you for spending time with Bird Intelligence. I'll see you in the next one.